South African singer and actress Kelly Khumalo is no stranger to the tabloids. With a trail of controversial lovers and drug-fueled past, Kelly has faced all the drama with her head held high. In this exclusive, no questions barred interview, we're sitting down at the superstar to get behind the story of Kelly Khumalo.
You had like a very wholesome image. I mean, how do you stray from that to what ended up being?
Dude, I'd go to church high.
You were even tweeting in tongues at some point. So Jub Jub, the father of your kids, he's going to be coming out soon.
You will have a restraining order against him.
What happened that night?
I'm one person that's dying to talk about this.
Over the last decade, we've seen a triumph over adversity. We've witnessed the ups and downs, trials and tribulations. But the one thing that remains unshaken about this woman has to be her voice. So, ladies and gentlemen, joined on the hot seats by the one and only Kelly Khumalo. How's it going, ma'am?
I'm great. You didn't tell me it was a hot seat.
Well, it's not really hot, but we'll make it hot just because you're on it.
Oh, great. I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm well. Why do you look nervous?
I'm not. I'm never nervous about anything except before I go on stage.
It's so weird because when I first heard about you before I met you, for some reason I just assumed you were from KZN.
I am from KZN.
But I thought you grew up there.
I grew up there.
Really?
Yeah.
Then what's the story about you growing up in the East Rand?
I spent some time in KZN, like 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
During primary school. So then moved here in 1997. So.
Oh, that's not bad then.
So it's not bad. So half of my life in KZN and half of my life in Spirit View.
And did you ever think you'd get into entertainment?
I've always known. That's one thing that I've always known. I mean, I've always known that I wanted to be a musician because I knew I had a talent from a very young age. So I knew, I admired Whitney Houston in those times, and I really wanted to be the next Whitney Houston.
And do you always find it surprising when people actually realize that you've got a strong voice?
I've shocked a lot of people. I think maybe the way that I was positioned when I dropped my first album, my music was very poppy. I was never really positioned as a soulful singer, which is who I am. So it took time for people to warm up or to even recognize the talent in me. So it's okay. I'm partly to be blamed for it.
Now, this is why I bring up the KZN thing, because a lot of people, when they grow up over there, you don't really think that you're going to get into entertainment. Or maybe it's slightly better now with Odira and Afrotainment and all those things.
Yeah, but
back
I'm
in the day,
from the Bundus.
But this is exactly the point. It's even more remote. You'd never even think that you'd be able to do something like that.
Well, I guess if you have a dream, you never, you don't even think about where you are and where you're from. You just want what you want, which is what I've always believed, that I wanted to be a musician, not just a musician, but a very well-known, successful musician.
The first time I met you was in Fresh's studio. He was still at YFM at the time, doing the breakfast show.
Yeah.
You just dropped, I think, your first single. The album wasn't out yet, if I'm not mistaken. You had a very wholesome image. They knew you were a virgin, for example.
Okay, you were saying?
Who put that out? Who put that
Let me
bit
tell
of
you,
information
I am
out?
one person that would never want that stuff to be out. At that point, I was still very young and wasn't aware that anything you say will be held against you, especially by the media. I had just got proposed on All You Need Is Love. So everybody wanted to know about me being proposed on national TV and whatnot. So I went for an interview and he was like, "So you're staying with this guy?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not staying with him. In fact, we are not even sleeping together, and I'm not planning to until I'm married." So I never said I'm a virgin.
But that seemed to be the narrative, and it went on for years even. I remember...
Even now,
But people think you're a virgin now? That's funny.
No, it's really funny because I'm a mother of 2 now, and I can't even remember my days of being a virgin,
But you went with it though. I mean, the first album was titled Ichi Ichi.
Because that's what I was called. I was like, okay, cool. Since you are going to call me this, let me just give you what you want.
Did you have a plan coming to a game that you're always gonna spin headlines to your favor?
No, actually. But now, when you're in the industry, if certain information is going to be used against you, you learn to live with it. You learn to capitalize on it. You know, the best has to come out of it.
In your own words, take some time out and just tell me about the whole relationship between you and Bonsai. From the beginning, the first demo, to the court case, to you deciding to part ways.
Bonsai was not just a producer. He was also a brother to me and a spiritual mentor. And I was at the point where I was still trying to find myself. And there was a lot of no's more than the yes. And that didn't work for me as a young person at that time. I needed to know the industry for what it is outside of them. So there was a rebellious me in between all of that, such that it led to me just wanting to be all by myself and not knowing whether that was good for me or bad for me.
And are you guys in touch now?
Yes, every now and then, but I haven't spoken to him since last year. We love each other.
Would you do it again?
Yes, I would. I needed to find me. And the me that I've found now, I would not trade for anything. I can't be boxed. I'm not a person to live in a box. I suffocate.
And then your mom's guidance?
My mom is a very interesting lady. My mom has loved and supported me. But more than anything else, my mom has let me be me. I've never been the child to be told what to do. I hated that. I still hate that. So I think my mother sort of figured it out, and she was like, you know what, let me let her be rather than fighting her, because when she would fight me, she would lose me. Like, I would move out and go live with my aunt elsewhere until she comes down or I come down.
You speak about your mom a lot, but you seldom speak about your dad.
I hardly, because I don't know the dude.
Not well or not at all?
I know him. Well, it's a long story, Sizwe.
And we've got all the time in the world.
We're gonna have to have another. We're gonna have to have another interview based on that alone. I've had a very rather confused relationship with my so-called father, who happened to not be my father. For me, I've never really had a father.
And did you find out that he wasn't your father late in life, or did you always know that he wasn't your father?
Part of me I've always known, but you know, when your parents are not willing to give you enough information, there's really not much you can do. I mean, I've asked my mother about it, but we never really, you know, got to get to answers without disagreements.
And I guess that's some of the things that led to the rift that you and your mom had.
We had a push and pull type of a relationship. It's only now that I've learned to just let go and just love her and understand that no parent would want to hurt their child intentionally. I mean, we go through situations and we just learn to live with them. When I'm in love, there's no telling how far I would go. The higher you go, the lonelier it gets. I just became so hooked in drugs and I forgot about everything. I was a shadow of myself at that time.
You were even tweeting in tongues at some point.
Dude, I would go to church high.
Then you went quiet. What happened?
I was going through things.
Look, like you went for like 3, if not 4 years.
Yeah, it was 3 years. I remember I became a drug addict. Those are the sort of repercussions of having money when you're young and you don't know what to do with it. I was in a bad space, I was in a bad relationship. I was not motivated at all. In fact, I just became so hooked in drugs and I forgot about everything.
How do you go from that young girl, 20 years old, that we described earlier on, to, I guess, the woman now who's hooked on drugs?
I think it's the company you keep. Because, I mean, when you're younger, you want to be in with the cool kids. One thing leads to the next. And also, for me, I'm also a love addict, you know? And when I'm in love, there's no telling how far I would go, to a point where, I mean, the boyfriend was a druggie as well, so it was easy for me to get into drugs to impress, trying to keep him with me. So you know how druggies are. They disappear for days. You're trying to find him, he's not there. So you end up thinking, maybe I should be part of this so that I never have to go through the heartbreak of having to try to find him. He's unreachable, or he gets up to no good wherever he is, you know?
Do you ever feel isolated, lonely?
Yeah, most of the time. I think the industry does that to you. The higher you go, the lonelier it gets. Because you're never around most of the time to make friends or to even keep friends. You have no kids, nothing. You come home from a gig, it's just you. It gets very lonely.
Parents can always tell when you're losing your child, so to speak.
She could pick it up because I would not go home as often as I used to, because I would want to hide the person that I was becoming.
And surely Bonsai would report back to her as the guy.
I had left Bonsai already. So for me, I really let go of everyone that would know that something's wrong with me.
And then what about you specifically? Where in your life would you say you realized, okay, things aren't going as I wanted to now?
When I started missing shoots and I would get to shows late, and I was not strong enough to be on stage, and my craft requires a lot of energy, which I did not have at that time. That's when I knew things were not going well.
Was this an emotional thing or the drugs? Or...
It was everything. It was an emotional thing, the drugs, and as well as being in an abusive relationship with a partner that's constantly cheating on you, abusing you physically and emotionally. So for me, I was a shadow of myself at that time.
But you always, I mean, you mentioned you're a spiritual person, but there was also like an element of church in you as well. Like,
I've always been a church
yes.
person.
So, I mean, how do you stray from that to what ended up being?
I think your surroundings determine your destiny. I mean, I've seen that in my life where I've surrounded myself with wrong people and I really ended up in the wrong place. Yeah.
And during that time, do you still have faith in God or not really?
Dude, I'd go to church high.
Really?
I know.
And what sort of drugs were you doing?
I used to take cocaine.
Was that the only thing?
No, it was the only thing. It's the only thing I knew. I mean, Sizwe, look at it this way. This is a church girl who grew up in church, was raised by a very religious family, and I knew nothing. I never really even thought drugs were real until I got to really see them. So it's the only thing that I've ever known.
How much would you say you wasted just on that habit alone?
No, I wasted quite a lot, eh? I wasted quite a lot of money. I mean, I would fall behind with my payments, like my house payments, and I lost a house due to that.
And this is when you had a music career and an acting career?
Yeah. I was bowling. I was really bowling, and for me, I did not see it happening, and yet it was happening. Yeah.
Maybe you knew you could act, but I certainly didn't when I first saw you.
I didn't.
I always thought you were a singer. Then Rhythm City comes along.
I was just trying it out, to be quite honest. I was like, okay, that seems cool. Let me try it out.
Then why did you leave?
I was exhausted, for starters. My music career was not where I wanted it to be. I remember when I released an album while I was still acting, it flopped because I wasn't there to promote it.
Do you ever miss acting?
I do. I mean, if something was to come out, I'd definitely do it, but not permanently. I love my music.
You went on quite a Twitter rant.
When?
And it was maybe a year
You've been spying on me.
No, I've always known you, so I always kind of follow what happens.
Yeah.
And you said all sorts of things. You were even tweeting in tongues at some point. What was going on that night?
I think a lot of people would think that I was high. No, I had been clean for months then. Because I quit, no, it wasn't 2012, it was 2013, I remember. I think I was going through one of those things on Twitter. You know when you read something and it disturbs you spiritually, and I had to react.
So do you remember what it was?
That's what I said.
Yes, but what was it that you needed to rebuke?
People get very judgmental on social networks. But all I can remember is that it was very negative, and it was not even towards me. I'd hate to see someone getting hurt or someone being put down. So I had to just rebuke that negative spirit, and I'm that person. I hate negativity.
I'm trying to decide whether we should mention his name or not. And I suppose maybe it's not.
This is my shine. Can we not? I would not like to share my shine.
So we don't have to mention his name, but we must speak about that particular relationship because I think there's a lot in it. How did you meet the guy?
We met in the industry. I mean, you know how we bump into each other at functions and gigs, and we just, you know, sort of liked each other at the time, and that's how it started.
So it obviously didn't start off badly?
No, I'd be lying if I said it started badly. No. He was a sweet guy. I think he still is. I mean, we all lose ourselves somehow, especially if there's drugs involved and a very shaky upbringing. I would not want to badmouth him. He also had his demons and I had mine.
And then?
And we hooked up and fell in love with each other, and we started spending a lot of time together, and it became, you know, that type of, you know, the celebrity kind of life, you know?
I don't know if you remember this now, trip to Zanzibar. Then it seemed like you were fine. I mean, I couldn't pick up anything, but then again...
I was pregnant.
What do I know? I don't know any of these things.
I was 2 months pregnant when we were in Zanzibar. Of course, I wasn't showing. It was my first child, so I was already going through change.
But you weren't going through any troubles then? Because you looked very happy.
No, I was very happy, extremely happy. I think it's only at the later stage where it started getting very intense. He's not there. I'm pregnant. He's not there. He's hardly there. He's drugging, and he's with other women, and that's when things really started getting very heavy for me.
So Jub, the father of your kids, he's going to be coming out soon.
For me, Molemo doesn't exist.
People then said, but this guy has a wife.
She was trying to push me off the road while I was driving. As much as I loved Senzo, I feel like that relationship was a waste of my time and energy.